It turns out that it's actually easier to find straight men on gay dating sites than it is to find straight lumber at the hardware store. So, in episode 2, I turned this into this. So we're halfway there with what I've built so far. Most of the hard work's out of the way, which is getting everything laid out and squared up and true to something so that everything else can go in nice and easy. Trying to figure out how to fit in this last bit of bench and connect it to make a full-size bed here. But I did actually install a step really quick, and I landed up putting this bundle of wires, if we can see it here. There's a whole bundle of wires that runs down and then up over here. And I didn't want to be stepping on that, so I put that step there. And what I'm thinking I'm going to try and do here, we'll see if that works out or not, is I want the bed to actually only come out about yay far. And then I actually have a little bit of leg room to get in and around when it's just in bench mode. So here's what I figured out for the seat. I'm actually going to make basically a box that's removable, and I've decided to actually go bolt through with the leg on this side, so the 2x4 will sit across and go like that. You'll see that in a sec. And then all that has to be taken out is a bolt, and no messing around with a nut, because I have one of these, and I'll put on the screen here what it's actually called, because I can't remember what the name of it is. Okay, so here's the problem. I don't know why I didn't even notice. The threads end at less than the full depth of the wood. So I have to go find a fully threaded bolt in order to make this work. So see what I can find. Well, much to my despair, this can't go in tonight because I don't have any other bolts. So for now, either way, I'm going to put it together just with a nut so that it's put together, and if I want to upgrade later, I'll figure out how to do that. So there it is. That's what I've come up with to hold this leg in place. It still requires a wrench and whatnot to take out, but it's not permanently fixed with screws, so it'll be easy to get this section out. But we'll see how the rest of that turns out. I just got to do this one, and then we'll build this, the rest of this, and you'll get to see that. Okay, I got a little busy working away there and didn't record doing all of this stuff, but I got all this secured down, and as you can see, you just simply pop out the bolts. And out it comes. The next thing I'm doing here is I'm installing the third rail. As you can see, like I did on the other side, I've got these brackets that hold in this 2x4. This one's installed completely. So I can show you actually what happens here. I just plop it out of there, find a spot for it, and then I can get everything under there, no problem. And then when I put this back, and then I can put the panel back in for the bed and have a full 28 inches across for sleeping space. So that's pretty decent. Okay, so I'm gonna get all that installed and start working on the next bit here. Okay, so we decided to take the dogs out for a run before supper. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And this storm is starting to get a little more fun. Oh, we got some lightning over there now too. So we're gonna go sit out in the field and see if we can get some cool lightning strikes, maybe. We've got deer!
Where? Oh yeah, look at him.
Oh, I wish I had my long lens with me. So we're here at the my favorite spot where Light goes for a run. And we're gonna watch some storm and let the dogs have a run here.
They might chase the deer.
No, I think the deer are far enough away. And that's the mother unit.
The what?
The mother unit. One in. Watch your tail. And if you look to your left, you'll see Mordor, the home of our great king Sauron. Back to the van. Yeah, I got this all bolted in, all set in, so I'm gonna cut the panels here for this, and it's gonna go, that was my head. It's gonna go across here to here. It turns out that there's actually, it's actually easier to find straight men on gay dating sites than it is to find straight lumber at the hardware store. So, I am going to have to actually improvise this because I don't have anything here that is a straight enough edge to cut my edges, which really sucks because it means more work for me. Half of this 2x2 is actually straight, and or thereabouts. So I might actually be able to get away with cutting this in half and then clamping twice. No, that's not actually gonna work either. Damn it. Well, this is a predicament, isn't it? To every problem, a solution, and to every solution, another problem. However, to another problem, another solution. So this 1x6 has a very nice straight edge, which is a bit of a natural beauty to wood like this because it'll tend to actually not warp as much in this direction as other lumber. Just because, I mean, you've got 6 inches that it has to deform in order for it to warp. So it's a good cutting edge, and I'd used it already, but I was gonna cut the whole sheet length. And then I measured this end to end, and it's only 74.5. But, lo and behold, the actual length of my platforms is actually only 73.5. And because I was actually gonna put an inch of overhang over on that end, it'll work perfectly. So, the solution henceforth is that I will actually first rip off the end of the whole sheet of plywood, which means I lose any long pieces, but I'm pretty well using most of the whole sheet anyways, so I actually don't have to worry too much about it. So I'm not going to worry too much about it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that up and speed up the footage so you can watch me do some cutting action. Oh yeah. Okay, so that end's all cut up. Now we'll start cutting our 14-inch strips. And quick while I'm at it, here's a handy little tip brought to you by Robert. Regular old paintbrushes make amazing surface top brooms to clean off your work area. And not just for this, actually, not just for woodwork and stuff. These work awesome for like just dusting off electronics or just about anything, even like your tools. You know, you can get all the dust out of there and you can get it all nice and clean. So definitely an awesome thing to have. So I was being a dumbass, and I sort of forced the saw to fall off the end of the table here, and it cut its own cord, and it was all a fun thing, and now the blade's all bent. So I'm gonna have to replace this blade and hope that even that's all bent and everything looks like it's bent out of whack. So I might just outright be screwed actually now, completely, because I don't have another saw that'll replace the skill saw. So I'm gonna try and make it work. Okay, so basically Saturday morning was a bit of a waste because I had to fix this saw. When I dropped it off the end of the workbench, well, the blade was still spinning. It hacked off the cord here, and so I had to repair that, and I bared off all the connections and cleaned them up, and then I actually soldered them together and then wrapped it in a heat shrink tube and shrunk that on there. So that should be a good solid fix on that cord. The saw has only got to at least get me through the rest of this job. I straightened out, this was bent as well, and this was bent. The shield was bent, so I had to re-bend all this back. It's actually still slightly out, but it shouldn't be out enough to really cause me issues for what I need to do with it still. Everything I'm cutting with it is fairly thin panels, so even if it has a slight bit of an angle on it, it won't be a big deal. So I've got the bed and bench panels cut out here, and now I just need to notch them out here, here, and down at the far end there to fit in those spots, and we'll finally have a completed bed. It'll just need to be screwed down. Cool. So with all the panels cut and notched out here, I have gone ahead and sanded this first one, and I drilled some holes in it. I think they're 7/8 of an inch, so I can put my finger in here and lift out the panels. So I've got the panels all sanded up. I rounded off these edges so that they wouldn't be a point of frustration for me getting in and out, always hitting myself on a sharper corner. So with that edge cut, that'll be a little bit friendlier on me. For now, what I'm gonna do is I really didn't want to leave these just bare wood. I wanted to get them sealed so it'll help keep the slivers down and to make it a little bit friendlier. Like, it feels pretty good right now. Like, normally you wouldn't even think about running your hand over OSB, but there's little bits where it feels like it might come up again. Josh happened to have a bucket of floor finish, floor wax as it's called by a lot, and this is used in the janitorial industry to refinish floors in commercial places and offices and whatnot. You know the type of floors. They're those square tiles with the really shiny finish, and the janitors come in and refinish it every once in a while. So this is that stuff. And It's a water-based sealer. It's acrylic actually, so it basically forms plastic is what happens. I've got my brush here, which I shouldn't have left out drying up. Oops, my bad. Because I actually put the first coat already on these panels, and you really can't tell at the moment. I'm going to try and put about 4 or 5 on here, or no, let's say 5 or 6 coats, and Can be sanding between each coat to take off the roughness and whatnot. And already it feels like you can feel on here that the little bits of wood are a little more glued in on the surface, but there's still little bits of splinter that want to come off. So we'll get those coats on there, and then we should actually have a bit of a gloss on here actually when I'm done. And you should be able to just run your hand across it and not worry about any slivers. And I would show you that, however, my battery is actually just about to die, and I need to give it a full charge here. So I'm just going to actually go ahead and do this and not catch that on video. But here's one final look at how these are looking right now. And my next shot here, right after this next cut, should be this, nice and glossy. So this is about 4 coats of floor sealer on the bed and bench panels. So as you can see, they got a little bit of gloss on them now, and they're a lot more friendlier, although I'm thinking I might get a few more on there, but I got to move on actually and work on a little bit of other stuff here, and I might coat them before I'm done for the day so they can dry overnight, because they're actually still they still feel a little bit, it's not wet, but it does feel really, really soft. And it can take up to 24 hours for it to get hard on the surface. So I just gave the panels another sanding with the sanding sponge and applied another coat of wax. It's taking quite a bit longer to actually get a decent seal on this. It's still wet right now. This is the 4th coat. But it is taking way, way longer to dry than I had anticipated. I should have known better too. The wood's very absorbent and it holds on to a lot of the moisture, and because this floor wax is very, very thin, it's almost water thin, it soaks right in. And the other issue is it actually causes some of these wood chunks to swell, and I've actually had to rip off a few that posed potential sliver hazards. But now that I've got the 4th coat on, I should actually be able to start just slapping coats on one after the other on this, because it looks like most of the surface is actually sealed down now. So all the extra coats now are going to just kind of be coating on top of that, and we should be good. So while that's drying though, I'm about to move back to the finish working on the computer tower here. And as you can see, I've got that top brace in for the monitors. Now I've got to get this bottom brace in and the keyboard tray and a bunch of other stuff for it. But in order to do that, I actually have to first pull out this framework here. The reason I need to take it back out is because in order to bolt my next board in, I don't want to screw right through both boards actually, because in the event that I actually want to pull this part out, I'd rather be able to do that without disturbing any of that. But it'll also be a double pain in the ass if I need to make any adjustments on this, because all the screws are going to be hidden behind these 2x4s right there. So either way, I'm going to start pulling that out and try not to disturb the fresh coat here. So there's about half of the battle. I got the 2 pieces out. I'm not 100% sure what to call them yet. I called them a ceiling bridge because they sort of are, but they're also the legs for the counters. So, but they are what they are. They're part of the cabinet. And because I missed a lot of it in the last video here, now that it's out, we can actually see a little bit of what I had to do here to get this in here. Just with the way everything lined up, it was advantageous for me to try and push this as deep into the window well as possible. But of course, the obvious problem is that because of the way that's set up, the board couldn't go through the frame, so I actually cut all this out using the miter saw. So I got those done, and then I wanted to get as much width in this as possible when I put this in. So that's actually why I landed up dropping this back level down, so that it could actually go under here, because I had this hump back here. So to accommodate that, that was the best way to do it. And I wanted to keep them up as close to the ceiling as possible as well. So I didn't want to drop the whole top down here. And the other challenge I'm going to be facing here is actually getting anything in through the other side of this, because the seat doesn't leave that much room to get a drill back in here. It's slightly disappointing. And this is tilted up as far as it'll go and up as far as it'll go. What I might have to do, depending on what I come up with here, is I may actually have to pull these out as well and then attach everything in there first and then reinstall everything down. But that was sort of the reason I actually went with this foot design this way, was so that they're easy to remove as whole units. So we'll start working on this, get the next cross brace in here for the monitor, get a keyboard tray, and figure out exactly where I'm going to put my computer tower. And so speaking of my computer, I thought I'd show you guys that really quick. We'll see some more of this soon, and I'll talk about the specs that are in it. This is my editing machine. But yeah, this is actually a really neat case. It's a little bit bigger than I was thinking, like I said, but it's all good because it has these handles and these sort of looped feet made out of plastic rubbery stuff. And what it does actually is, this will be really good in a vehicle. It gives me something to actually strap to, as well as it actually helps to absorb some of the shock. So the shock going from the van will be sort of absorbed into these a little bit better than if it was just a normal case. And as you can see, it's shorter. It's a micro ATX case, which means it's a smaller motherboard. But it means it's a way fatter case. So it's going to be a little tricky to fit that in there, and I'll have to decide that when I'm building this tower and whatnot. Yeah, we'll talk more about my editing rig at some point here. And this is it, working on project. Oh, I've got help improve Adobe products. Sure, why not? And of course, this menace. I'm sure everyone's been dealing with this one. Do I or do I not? I'm actually still on the fence as to whether or not I want to do that Windows 10 upgrade. So we'll see about that. Yeah, so back to work and figuring out how exactly to get this guy in there. Okay, so I'm about to start on the bottom bracket for the monitors. These are basically going to be on here like that and like that, so that ultimately they look like that. So there's the bottom brace for the monitors. I only had to break off 2 screws. I don't know if this piece of wood is just that much tougher than the rest. Apparently these deck screws from the big box store aren't a very good quality, and they can't take the torque of my Makita. Doesn't surprise me. Now to get this installed, oh, right, I gotta put the plastic holders on the front, so we'll do that next. We'll put those on. Okay, so I got that all put together, and then I've got the these plastic plates that go on there. But I'm actually going to leave them off for now. I just got them pre-installed so the screw holes were ready to go and easier to put back in once it's in place. But I will be putting those on after I actually get the monitors in, just so I can do any adjustments I need to. But the idea is the monitors should be able to slide, is kind of what I'm going for. So I can actually so I could slide them open like a cupboard door and get in behind here.
So I finished assembling the bottom bracket for the monitors, and then I added my shelf behind it, and I did it so that it was actually at the bottom of the 2x4s as opposed to above the 2x4s, so that it would actually hold stuff and it couldn't slide out of here. I'm gonna put some type of, I might just put some plexi across here or something, I'm not too sure, just to keep stuff from sliding out the sides and block it in. Not 100% sure yet. I might actually put my computer monitor back here, or sorry, my computer tower back here because it'll fit. Or I may put it on the counter over there. I'm still not 100% decided. It all depends on how I can pack everything in here and whatnot. And then I extended this other smaller shelf out, and originally I was actually just gonna make one big shelf. And then I was like, well, the way it was working out, it was easier to put this 2x4 between both of those. And because they had to be set back because of where the ceiling is, I decided to just go ahead and put that there for maximum strength, of course, because I can get right into the 2x4. And then I actually just cantilevered this little shelf out. Not sure what I'll use it for just yet, but this uses up the maximum amount of space. You'll see I actually had to cut this corner off because it was catching on the door. That's how tight it is right here, which is great. I wanted to get as much space as I could in here usable. So the way I did that is I went to Home Depot and I picked up some 1x4s and I strapped them on the bottom. Now there's a reason I actually did it this way. It's not exactly the strongest type of shelf you can have, but it worked for what I needed, and this helps hold the plywood in, which is actually it'll be screwed to these, but it's just a loose panel inside there. As you can see, I actually ran out of material. Bit of a mistake because I landed up cutting these sides first, and then I went to cut this and I was a little bit short on material. No big deal though. Basically, it's the same as the others except for it just won't be attached to this, which isn't really that structural anyways. This is just to hold stuff in the shelf from sliding out, and that's not even screwed down yet because I actually need to go get some smaller screws. I've got 3/4 inch screws which are too short, and then I've got 3-inch screws which are about that high. So I either need to get new screws or I'll need to cut screws off if I put them in there. And the reason I did this shelf with the flat 1x4s like this was actually because I'm going to be putting this keyboard tray, I'm going to be slinging it underneath. It comes from the computer desk I'm actually using right now. So right now I actually don't have a keyboard tray on my desk because I need to get this installed. So it works good though. It's a lockable. It locks out and in. I can't remember the name of this type of slider, but it's the kind of slider that doesn't just pop out, which is really great. It's all a contained slider, which means this tray isn't going to just fall out. And it will go right under there towards this direction, so I'm going to have it slightly offset because of where the seat is, and my mouse will go in there as well. In order to get this to line up as best as possible, make sure that it's working, what I've done here is I've clamped onto the bottom of it here. I'll actually use it as its own template to make my holes here for a lot of reasons. I wanted to make sure that it works and that the holes actually line up, because if they are out, if they're not parallel and stuff, they won't open and close right. So I've been able to test it by just using the clamps. So, and this is the hardware it gets mounted with.
So the first bit is there's this anchor with these big, really gnarly looking teeth here. So first I actually drill out just a normal hole out of the bottom, and then I screw this little thing in using a Allen key, and then this screw goes through the bracket and into the bottom of there. And that's how it was mounted on my previous desk, so I'm gonna go ahead and just reuse the same hardware. Plus the other thing is usually because my arms are resting on here, I put a fair bit of weight on the front of this while I'm working. And it hasn't pulled out of my other desk, which is made out of particle board, so I figured, you know what, these things might be worth their weight, so let's use them. So I'm gonna do that now. Well, it turns out I couldn't even get my drill in square because of that leg right there, so I landed up actually having to pull this board off, so I'll have to put it back in here. But I've got the holes drilled there and there. So I'm going to go ahead and put the hardware in and see how that turns out. Okay, so the hardware is installed. Now we'll put the keyboard tray under there and hope to goodness I lined those up properly. Just like it came out of the factory. Lined up almost perfectly. I mean, perfectly might be a stretch, but... And now... a working keyboard tray. It doesn't quite lock as well as I'd hoped, so what I may land up doing is some kind of tie back on it or something to... I'll see what I can come up with as far as just making sure it's secure when I'm driving. But other than that, that works pretty darn good. It fits nice just over my knees, so I've got lots of room. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to build one more shelf now down here underneath the keyboard tray. But I have to be careful because my feet and knees need some space so I can stretch things out. Oh, that's going to drive people nuts. Look at that. I wear socks with sandals. Anyways, more on that later. But yeah, there'll be another shelf here, and then it's gotta be high enough that the batteries aren't interfered with, and low enough to be useful without banging into my knees. So I might have to come up with something creative, or we'll see how that works out. I'm thinking something so the shelf will be actually set back about here, slightly underneath, as opposed to all the way out here. I'd really like to record this, building this shelf for you, but I need to recharge my battery again. And unfortunately, I've only got one battery right now, and it's already turning into a big pain in the butt. I had a second battery, which cost me $80 when I bought it brand new, and I have not been able to find it for way too long now. So I'm assuming it's gone for good, which is $80 out of my pocket, and it kind of hinders me being able to do this. So once I can get some work or get some money, I'm probably going to try and buy a new battery as a bit of a priority so I can keep on recording and not miss this stuff. But the next bit I'll cut in here and we'll show this shelf in place and then get working on the rest. And there it is, my shelf. And it looks upside down, but that's how I intended it. I actually landed up sanding down this plywood because I knew that this edge would be exposed and I didn't want to get a bunch of slivers, especially when working on the batteries. But I screwed this in really well, and it's actually glued on. There's a major structural disadvantage to having the bottom built like this, but it works for what I need, which was something that could hold on to stuff without the need for any kind of strapping or anything. So there's a lot of little stuff that can just kind of go in here. So that's good. I got to put the plywood back in here and get these little sides on. And then probably the last major thing I need to do with this outside of just wiring and everything is figuring out how and where to mount the inverter. They're not supposed to be overly close to the batteries because of the gases they vent, but I'm going to be venting the batteries anyways out through a hose because I can actually attach onto the vent on the big guy. And then I've got a few ideas for getting this one vented. We'll be seeing more of this right away. It has a display on it. Oh, it's heavy. It does have a digital display which will tell me my output. So I kind of want to keep that visible, as well as the outlets need to be accessible. So a few considerations. One is to maybe put it in over here. Oh, shoot. Or something, but it would mean I gotta attach some more boards to mount it to. So more on that. That'll be kind of the next big thing after I finish the last bit of woodwork in the back. So I'm gonna put the back part back in, and then we'll take a good look at everything. Okay, so this has got to be my most brilliant idea on the van yet. So it occurred to me to actually make it slide out. So I can bring it in over top of myself like this, and out as far as I need to, and outright just remove it out of the van if I need to as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use these 2x2s, and I'm just gonna screw them in so they make a channel with the bottom 2x4, right? Okay, so I've got those screwed in, and it seems to work. Not too bad. It's a little bit clunky, but it does the trick. It catches a little bit when I push it back in. So I may add something else just to keep that from happening, but more or less, that is pretty nifty. I think that's a cool little addition. So that, and you can see it kind of comes over me quite nicely. Well, now that I've got most of everything put back in here, I'm gonna do a cleanup here. This whole shop is a disaster, and I've only got well, technically till tomorrow or so, or later this week, to get out of here. So I still got to get all this wired up. So after I clean up and have a sleep, that'll kind of be the next big thing, is to get this inverter wired in and tackle that, so I'm ready to go. Hopefully it's not too big of a job. I'm usually pretty quick at the wiring and the electronic stuff. So, and then we'll see more of this tomorrow. I'm also gonna put one more coat of finish on these benches too, and let them dry overnight one more time. And as you can see, they're actually pretty glossy already, but I want to get a really heavy coat on here just to make sure that no slivers come out. I mean, I don't feel too bad running my hand over it now, but I think another coat or two will really give me a little more confidence that I'm not going to get slivers out of there. So I figured before I clean the shop here, actually, I'd give a before and after look at the place. So as you can see, it is one heck of a disaster. Sawdust everywhere. The van's full of sawdust. There's little bits of stuff everywhere. So yeah, I'm gonna tackle this for the next little while I drink some coffee and show you what it looks like when it's all cleaned up. And there it is. The shop is fairly cleaned up. No sawdust left on the floor. And I have got most of the interior done. All that's left are maybe some small modifications, building a little bit of shelving up in here and whatnot as I need to, but time is running out. So the next big step here is to start installing the electrical system. Hey, yeah, so it's been 2 days since I measured my temperature, and I basically lost the last 2 days. It only got worse, but I'm pretty doped up on cold medications and cough syrups and stuff, so I can kind of keep myself going for a little bit here. And I'm gonna get back to installing this inverter and finishing up the van and getting it all packed up. It's actually already Saturday, June 11th, so I'm quite a bit behind schedule here for hitting the road, and I'm probably going to stick around Lloyd for a couple days here
to go see a few people and see what I can do about earning a little extra money doing something, so that I have enough fuel in my tank to make sure I can get where I need to get. So yeah, we're gonna move on with that, and here we go.